Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode in the series called Dawah Ilallah, as we look at how we can use the comparative sciences in calling people to submit to the one true God. And in this series we have looked at the beliefs that Christians have, some of the doctrines that they hold to. We've looked at some of the different religions, Christian religions. We've looked at Hinduism, or specifically the Krishna consciousness movement. We've even touched on Satanism and a little bit on the alternate music scene even. So we've dealt with a number of different issues. And we've also spoken occasionally on how to motivate yourself, how to enthuse yourself to be the best you can be in calling people to submit to Allah. And today, inshallah, I'm going to be doing one of those shows again. Today we're going to be talking about how we don't change Allah's message, His message changes us. And so this is done in a way to motivate you to make sure that you stay on the correct path as a caller to the message of Islam, to those people who are calling to submit to Allah. It is translated in the 15th chapter of the Quran in verse number 9. In English it says, "Verily, surely it is we who have sent down the Quran, and surely we will guard it from corruption." So when we look at the Quran, it is a message of change, surely. It is a message to change us totally. So surely we need to make a change in our lives if we are going to follow this passage that we find in the pages of the Quran. Allah has sent down the Quran, and surely He will guard it from corruption. We are challenged here on planet Earth today, each and every one of us, and every other planet known and unknown to us, that everything and every being that has been created has to and is obliged to believe in the miracle of the Quran. That over 1,400 years ago, that this message was passed, and not one single message or one line has been changed as it was passed down to us. That not one single passage has been revised or rewritten in the Arabic to suit the needs of the day. That the Quran as it was given has remained preserved. Many have tried to corrupt it. Many have tried to distort it or change this historical book from outside of Islam. Many have tried, and time again, they have failed time and time again. This is the most attacked book in the history of mankind, of any book that has ever been written. No other piece of writing has ever been attacked as much as the Quran has been scrutinized as much as the Quran has been accused of things more than any other book in the history of mankind. They have tried to distort it. They have tried to cover it. They have even tried to burn it, but they have been unsuccessful. Millions, however, have learnt it. Billions have learnt it. They have decided not to distort it, but to report it. They have decided not to cover it, but to love it. They have decided not to rewrite it, but to recite it. And they have decided not to burn it, but to learn it. Millions of people throughout the history of mankind have tried to take the Quran and apply it to their lives, and have done so successfully. It is mentioned in this ayah that we looked at that Allah says He will guard it, He will protect it, and He has done so over the 1,400 plus years that we've had the Quran. If we look at all the other so-called holy texts or holy books in the history of our existence as the species on planet Earth, as humans, the Torah, the Gospels, the books of Buddha, the Vedas, the versions of the Bhagavad Gita, they have all gone under changes, revisions, rewrites, and re-editings. They have been repackaged, they have been remolded, they have been relaunched, they have been reshaped from time to time, again and again and again, to suit the changes and the needs and the palates of the people of the day. They have been altered and added and subtracted to, they have been subtracted from, and they have been reshaped so that many of them don't even look anything like what they were originally were supposed to look like. And this is not what we find in the annals of Islam, in the pages of the Quran. So today, inshallah, we will be looking at, we don't change Allah's message, His message changes us. And we will, inshallah, look into the past, and then at the present, and then finally we will try to see what is required from you and me today to be a person who says, we do not change Allah's message, His message changes us. When looking at this topic, it is important to understand the past. How did this message from Allah develop? Every message that was given to mankind was given to a person who would be trustworthy, a chosen one to guide mankind to give the message of change surely or slowly. So a prophet or a messenger was chosen at different periods of time who was reliable and trustworthy. So what has been given to us today as the message of Islam has not been changed from the very first messenger that it was given to. The Prophet Adam was given the message, may Allah be pleased with him, just as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given the message, without changing it. May Allah be pleased with him. Has the message changed? No. Did Allah change the message every few centuries, like we see has been done with other books? Did He change His message like people change their cell phones and mobile networks? How they change their fashions and likes and dislikes? We find that Islam remained constant. We found that the Quran remained constant. Even though hundreds of thousands of years may have gone by, the same message that was given to the first man is the same message that will be given to the last human being on planet Earth. Ever since man breathed his very first breath, the message has remained exactly the same. Regardless of what popular media may say, Islam has not changed. Well, the Quran has not changed. Today people try to convince us that we no longer need to submit or serve Allah. People will say that we no longer need to obey the Sharia, no longer need to obey the law. People will say that we no longer need to perform our rituals like praying or fasting or giving zakat or going on Hajj, that we no longer need to submit to the one true God. But this popular, secular, godless culture that we belong to, that is continuously bombarding us with the idea that we don't need to daily do any of these things, is nothing new. This did not start in the 1980s or the 1960s or the 1970s. This started way back in the time of Noah, may Allah be pleased with him. And because of that, every single culture that we see in society has almost repeated what happened during that time in the period of Noah, may Allah be pleased with him. How the people refused to listen to his message. How people rejected his message even though they saw the warning signs. Even though they could physically see the danger coming, they still chose to reject it. Because man started even in that time to join partners with Allah. Even though they could feel the raindrops. Even though they could see the danger all around them. So from the very beginning, there has been a need for Allah to send messengers to mankind. A message of change, surely. Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike all agree in one way or the other, perhaps their theology might not agree, but they agree in one way or the other, that the central core message from Allah is that we need to worship Him alone and that we need to submit to Allah as the one true deity and that there is no other deity before Him or after Him. And that we will all someday, one way or the other, return to Him. Whether you be a Christian, whether you be a Jew, or whether you be a Muslim. We all agree one way or the other that that is going to happen somewhere along the line someday. We all believe that there will be a new beginning, the war to end all wars. We believe that there will be a final battle. Somewhere along the line, we as Muslims have forgotten that we need to give this message to humanity. This message is a message of change. The message of Islam, the message of the Quran, is a message of change, surely. We see that in the Quran when we understand that Allah does not change His message, that His message is there to guide each and every one of us. It says in the 7th chapter of the Quran, translated in English, verse 59, "Indeed, we sent Noah to his people and said, O people, worship Allah. You have no other God but Him. La ilaha illallah. Certainly, I fear you the torment of the great day of judgment." We need to take a break. When we get back from the break, we'll continue, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are continuing looking at, we do not change Allah's message, His message changes us. We are reading in the 7th chapter of the Quran in verse 59. As in the English translation, it says, "Indeed, we sent Noah to his people and said, O people, worship Allah. You have no other God. Certainly, I fear you the torment of a great day." And then it is said in verse 65, it says in chapter 7 as well, translated in English, it says, "And to Ad He sent their brother Hud. And he said, O my people, worship Allah. You have no other God but Him. Will you not fear Allah?" In chapter 16 of the Quran, verse 36 in English, it says, "And verily, we have sent every ummah a messenger." For every people a messenger saying, "Worship Allah alone and avoid all false deities." Every selected generation was sent a selected teacher. A prophet was sent to his own nation for a guidance. No group was a messenger not sent with a pure message, with a pure teaching, a message of change, surely. This pure, clean, unhampered message was delivered to the people. The message was delivered faithfully, and in some cases it was written down the same way as it was delivered accurately, as the messenger gave it, as he delivered. However, this did not always take place. It is almost like broken telephone that we used to play when you were a kid at school, where you'd pass a message in a group, and you would give the message to one person and he would pass it along, and eventually when it came back, it hardly ever sounded the same as the message was given. The message throughout the years has been changed by people with their own political interests, their own economic interests. So it hasn't always been the case that the message that was given was faithfully conveyed to the people. Worship has often changed over the years, where people will end up worshipping the messenger instead of the one who sent the message. So worship of the messenger instead of the one who sent the message is generally the case that we find in many societies in the world. The message was given clearly by these different prophets, but people decided to worship them instead of listen and obey their message. The message was sent in the same way to all the prophets, the pattern that has always existed in exactly the same way. When the word of Allah, the Quran, was sent, it was different to many others that have ever been sent before. The fact that this time Allah said He will preserve it. The same message that had been given to all the other messengers, the same message that had been given to all the other prophets, and had been recorded perhaps by many of them. But the Quran is the only book of all the books that I've ever come across, of holy books that have been written, that actually identifies itself and says, I am the Quran. Chapter 13, verse 31. Chapter 14, verse 1. Chapter 56, verse 77. Just to mention a few. The Quran is a book that doesn't need the word holy added to it, because it is already holy. It is the words of Allah. So we simply name it the Quran, the word that Allah has given to us. It is not like any other book that has ever been written, and definitely it is not like or can be compared to the Bible or to the Torah. It is a book unlike any book that has ever been written. From cover to cover, from page to page, it is the literal words of Allah. It is not the inspired word, it is the infallible word. Inspired, this means somebody gave you an idea. Infallible means it cannot have faults in it. It is sad that some people have not yet read this book and yet criticize this book. It is sad that people claim that Islam is incorrect, worshipping a false god, yet they have never opened the covers or even read the book itself before making these claims. This is a book of instruction. It is a book of guidance. It is a necessity for you to understand that it is a book that gives you the quickest directions to find your way through this life in the most successful way possible. The Quran was sent to guide and to give proof for everything that we now stand and believe to be true in life, whether it be scientific, mathematical, or historical. This book is a book that we as Muslims follow and believe in 100%. The Quran is the word of Allah without any doubt. It's unlike anything that's ever been written before. Today the Quran is a message of change, surely. This Quran demands that we act upon our beliefs. That it's not something that we just do passively. Allah is one God, without a partner, without changes, without need for changes, without any doubts, without any need for us to doubt. Yet people still argue this point that God is one. What will we do with this information that we know? Let us look at how we can make this message of Islam, and especially the message of the Quran, known to all of humanity. It says in the Quran, in chapter 15, verse 9, translated in English, it says, "Verily, it is we who have sent down the Quran, and surely we will guard it from what? From corruption or changes. Surely we have sent down the Quran. Surely we will protect it. Surely we will guard it." We must respect the message, and we must not change the message. We must try as much as possible in our lives to follow the message. So we must follow the message, and we must correct our actions. We must respect the message, and we must change. We must study the message, and we must put it into practice. We must never, ever, ever, ever change it to suit our desires or our wants. Today we are facing the choice in our life, either to believe the Quran 100% or not. We have to decide what we are going to do with this Quran. The Quran is not put in a glass case, and then on it, in front of it, it says break in case of emergency. The Quran is not something that needs to be put behind a glass case where it says on it, break in a case of emergency. The Quran is not a collection of children's bedtime stories. The Quran is a book of life. The Quran is a book of hope. The Quran is not an ornament to be placed on a highest place in your home as a decorative ornament. It is not to be placed as a doorstopper or a book holder. It is to be used as a blueprint to find true salvation in your life. The steps you must take in implementing the Quran into your life are the most important steps you'll ever take. More important than the first steps you took as a child. More important than the first steps you took at going to deciding what you're going to do as a career. More important than the first steps you took in making that commitment to marry somebody. More important than the first steps you did in making sure that you had a child. The step that you take now is the most important step in your entire life. If you make the Quran the central point of your life, you will have success. If you make it secondary, your life will always fail. Today, right now, take the step towards Allah. Take one step after the other to implementing the Quran in your life. If you want to be a good da'i, you cannot be emotional about this. You have to be logical about this. It's not an emotional, it's not an empty promise, it's not a game. It's a serious action into improving your life to such an extent that your entire life depends on what you do with this book. Today we have many kings, we have many leaders, we have many people who are in charge of us, and many people are trying to guide us. But this is the message that will change us surely. If you want to follow a president, that's your choice. If you want to follow a political party, that's your choice. If you want to follow an imam, that's your choice. If you want to follow the latest guru who teaches about economic issues, that's your choice. Me, I want to follow the Quran. I'm not interested in what country I belong to. I'm not interested in what flag that flaps in the sky. My eyes don't tear up when I see a flag flying. I don't get emotional when I hear the national anthem. I don't care what people say about political parties. I'm not interested in what language you speak. I'm not interested in how much money you have or don't have. I'm not interested in how influential you are in business. I'm interested in what your relationship to this Quran. What is your relationship to the book? You cannot claim to love Allah if you don't understand what's in the Quran. You have to study the Quran. Once you've studied the Quran, you need to implement the Quran. Once you've implemented the Quran, you need to teach the Quran. And once you've taught the Quran, you need to read it all over again and start all over again, because you're going to have forgotten by the end of the week what you learned this week. It's a book of change, surely. As it says in the ayah that we read, that it is a book that Allah will protect surely. So surely it is a book that we need to implement into our own lives. This is a message of change. It's a message that needs to make something inside of us change. If it doesn't change you and you remain the same, then surely you need to go back and read it again. Today, we haven't had much time, very short 25 minutes to talk about the most important book ever. But this is just a motivation to help you to be motivated in your dawah, to implement the Quran into your life. So that if you're calling people to submit to Allah, the only way to do it is to use this book. Because this is the book with a message of change, surely. So from me, Areeb Islam, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
مشفق متعطف لا ينتهي بالحصر ما أعطاه رب رحيم مشفق